Most people regard the lakes area surrounding the towns of Minocqua and Eagle River as a paradise for motorboating and fishing. It is, but there are also many miles of pristine, quiet streams there waiting to be paddled. The lakes area is located in the far north-central part of the state, right along the Michigan border. What's truly remarkable about this region is the unique way in which the water discharges. This is Wisconsin's highest elevation. The streams here flow downhill in 3 directions, toward Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, and the Mississippi River. This was once considered the state's greatest pinery. Huge white and red pines have historically dominated the land here. It'll never be like days of old, but you can still find stands of these majestic pines in isolated areas, many where only a canoe can take you. With thousands of acres of lakes and flowages, it's clear to see why vacationers and fishermen have swarmed here for over 150 years. Early on, people in the cities to the south recognized the benefits of escaping to the North Woods. Here they found fresh air, clean water, and plenty of room to stretch out. From the influx of tourists grew the famous resorts and lodges. One in particular gained national notoriety for hosting some less than desirable vacationers. In 1934, John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, and the rest of their gang sought refuge here, only to result in a famous shootout with the FBI. More respectable visitors, however, came here for the fishing and hunting, and those activities are still thriving today. Not all of the lakes are taken up by motorboat traffic, however. Bittersweet Lake's State Natural Area is one of these special places. No motors are allowed on any of the 4 small lakes that make up the zone. Short portages connect the lakes. A few designated reservable campsites are also available.
This whole series of lakes is managed for bass, so there are plenty of them in here and plenty hungry most of the time.
The many flowages that result from damming the rivers are an ideal spot to get lost for a few days. Take advantage of the plentiful shoreline campsites. Most are furnished with a table, fire ring, and a primitive toilet.
It's a big playground. If you like the outdoors.
True, this is the place for lake recreation, but like you, we're interested in the much less traveled remote rivers the area has to offer. Here's a few that we think are worth exploring. The Manitowish emanates out of High Lake near Boulder Junction and continues west, then southwest for 44 miles before joining with the Bear River. These 2 waterways then develop the beginning of the Flambeau's North Fork. The first half of its life is occupied by flowing in and out of numerous lakes, some of which are formed by easily portaged dams. A fantastic overnight trip begins at the Highway 51 landing and continues for 20 miles, ending at Murray's Landing on the Turtle Flambeau flowage. Evenly spaced along the river system are isolated rustic campsites.
Before Paul Bunyan, it was Mr. and Mrs.
If you're only looking for a day trip, start halfway at the Highway 47 bridge and you'll have a nice 10-mile paddle. This is by far the most remote reach of the river. Here the river flows through an expansive marsh area dotted with wooded islands. One of the many terrific things about paddling the Manitowish is it always has enough water, even during summer. Another is it's perfect for all paddling experience levels. The only hazard on the river is an occasional fallen tree or limb, but since the current is easy, there's little concern over maneuvering around them. The name Manitowish is interpreted as either named for the Manitou or spirit people of the Ojibwa, or is derived from an Ojibwa word meaning a small animal like a marten or a weasel. There's no better way to explore a wild Northwoods river than in a birch bark canoe. Formed from materials harvested from nature, it paddles like no other type of craft, literally dancing along the surface like a freshly fallen leaf. Toward the end of the trip, the river winds through a broad wetland scattered with muskrat huts. The takeout is located at the very beginning of the huge turtle flambeau flowage. The flowage is produced by a hydroelectric dam built in 1906 that supplies power to a paper mill downstream. Dozens of campsites line the shore here, making it possible to continue your adventure even further. The Tomahawk River leads a relatively short life. It begins out of the lakes surrounding Minocqua, and after flowing through marshland, the willow flowage, and tumbling over some impressive rapids, it eventually ends at the town of Tomahawk by emptying into the Wisconsin River. The upper part of the river from Camp 9 Road to Cedar Falls is probably the least paddled, most secluded section of the river. It flows through the Tomahawk Pines State Natural Area, a protected, undeveloped tract of marshland made up of grasses, alder shrub, tamaracks, and swamp conifers with pockets of undisturbed towering red pines. This is another easy stream to paddle. It has a slow but steady current that meanders back and forth between the elevated islands and hills on either side of the marsh. Unfortunately, riverside camping is not available here, but the takeout is at the beginning of the willow flowage, where there is an abundance of free first-come, first-served campsites available. Just before the flowage's dam affects the river, and just below the takeout for this trip, is a series of ledges called Cedar Falls. At the right water level, they'd be fun to run through in appropriately outfitted canoes, but for now, we'll just have to enjoy them from shore. Downstream from the dam that forms the willow flowage is equally nice for paddling. There are even a couple of Class II rapids that can easily be portaged. Since it flows mostly through private lands, camping is still limited to neighboring campgrounds. The Wisconsin is the state's longest and best-known river. It begins at the Michigan border and flows south, then turns west towards Prairie du Chien, eventually draining into the Mississippi. It's hard to believe that this mighty river springs from such humble beginnings. It starts at the outfeed of Lac Vieux Desert. The river is barely recognizable here, but it quickly gathers more water from creeks and springs along its path. So much so that it can actually be paddled as far upstream as the Highway 45 bridge, only 2 miles from its origin. There are convenient canoe landings at nearly every bridge that crosses over the river, making it simple to customize a trip to suit your needs. For a pleasant day trip, we recommend that you take advantage of Roar's Wilderness Tours, Services and Hospitality, and begin your trip at their campground and landing. From here, it's a beautiful 8-mile paddle down to the Highway K Bridge. The river has a fairly consistent flow rate once all the winter snow is melted and flushed away. During normal summer and fall weather, it only fluctuates a foot or so. Aside from an occasional attempt by beavers to build a dam, the river here has few obstructions or hazards, thanks to local liveries and concerned paddlers. There are paddle-in-only campsites along the river as well. Contact the Vilas County Forest Department for more information about their use. Keep in mind, this is only the beginning of this mighty river. Downstream, there is mile after mile of magnificent river worth exploring. While paddling these streams, you would never guess that you were traveling through one of the state's most visited tourist areas. There's no need to shy away from these popular spots. We know of an escape from the crowds. Shh, it's our little secret. Another important reason to visit the lakes area is an annual paddling event we're sure you won't want to miss.
Well, we lost our daughter in 1999 after a 2.5-year battle against a brain tumor. And 5 years later, sitting around a campfire, we finally decided to try to do something. And we decided, since she loved to canoe, and she loved to canoe on this river, to have a canoe race. And we're pushing on $90,000 in 7 years. Wow. That we've raised. And the money goes to pediatric brain tumor research.
Paddlers come from about 5 states to participate in this race.
We have currently 12, 13 different classes. The race is 26 miles. It's a marathon race, but you can do half marathon, which is half of that. You can do either day. You can do the whole marathon over 2 days as a recreation paddler. You can do, we even have a little paddle for a tour race that's only a little 3-mile race. 2.5, 3 miles, that's what we figured, about 3.
About 3 miles, just for those who want to participate in the event and help the cause.
We cook over an open fire, 5 different meals. It's quite the deal.
It's a fabulous event. Everyone has a great time.